Hey guys, do you see a good move for white in this position? I'm going to guess that a lot of you might say, no, I don't really see anything, and that's okay. I'm going to ask you the same question at the end of the video, and I'm hoping that your answer is going to be different. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey guys, the topic of today's video is what's called a discovered attack. So a couple of videos ago, we looked at what was called discovered checks, which is when you moved one piece out of the way to unleash another piece, which created a check on your opponent's king. A discovered attack is the exact same thing, except you're not attacking the king, you're attacking another piece. So in this position right here, if we look at this bishop on b2, notice how it's lined up with the rook in the corner. If I were to move my knight anywhere on the board, then the bishop would be unleashed and it would be attacking the rook. That's called a discovered attack. And discovered attacks are extremely powerful, and they're actually much more common than discovered checks. And so if you can learn this tactic and learn how to use it, it's going to be a game changer for you. I can guarantee you that. And I want to demonstrate why discovered attacks are so powerful. So if I just change the position to this right here, very similar position, if I wanted to, I could play bishop to b2 and create an attack on the rook. Right? And then black would say, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. I'm going to move my rook. And they save their rook and the game goes on. And that was a really easy threat for my opponent to deal with. If we go back to this original position here, I can also make a move with my knight doing essentially the same thing, right? Attacking the rook with my bishop, except I also get to move my knight somewhere. And so if I can figure out something good to do with my knight, which you can probably already see this if you've been looking at the position for a while, knight to a4 or knight to d5 would be the move, right? Because now I'm attacking two things at the same time. It's kind of like a fork, right? A fork, when you move one piece and you attack two things at the same time, it's really good for you because your opponent can't save both of them. This is kind of the same thing if you're smart about your discovered attacks. So I could also move my knight here to create a discovered attack, but that's not going to help me because now, again, black just saves the rook and everything is fine. I want to pair that with a move like this, because now if my opponent just saves the rook, they're losing their queen, right? So they don't want to do that, so they're probably going to save their queen, but now they're losing the rook. You can see the problem from black. They can't save both pieces. And if you learn how to be on the lookout for these discovered attacks, like I said before, this is going to be a game changer, okay? So the way that I like to think about these is whenever you have a long-range piece lined up on something of value, so in this case, it's a bishop lined up on a rook, even if there are pieces in between, like in this case, there's a knight, you still want to be thinking about that. Okay, you still want to be thinking about that, and there might be a tactical opportunity available. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some real life examples, starting with this one right here. It's black to play. What move should black play? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is bishop takes e2. And normally just trading a bishop for a knight is just going to be a trade. It's not really a big deal. But in this case, what did we do when we moved the bishop? We unleashed our rook, which is lining up on white's queen. We can simply take the queen and we're going to win their queen. If they would have tried to save their queen, let's say they moved it over here, well, now we can move our bishop away and we just got the knight for free. So we want a piece either way, right? And so again, going back to when you have a long-range piece lined up on something of value, even if there's something in between, you want to be looking for a good opportunity. That's exactly what we had here, a nice little discovered attack on the queen to win a piece. All right, let's look at another one. Here we go. It's white to play. What move should white play here? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, bishop to e5 check is a killer move. And by the way, this is not a discovered check. This is a discovered attack that happens to be a check, okay? So it's a discovered attack because we're unleashing the piece here. And then it's just kind of a regular check with the bishop. But when you pair those together, black has to save the king, and we simply take the rook for free. Again, it's the same idea. Look at your long-range pieces. Do you have any of them lined up on something of value? And if you do, try to pair that with another good move. In this case, it was the check, okay? Let's go to the next one. All right, this one is a little bit more difficult. We're kind of getting into some of the more advanced ones, but keep that idea of discovered attacks in the back of your mind and try to find the best move for black in this position. All right, well, if you had a chance to do that, before I tell you the move, let's just kind of talk about how we would arrive at the correct move here. So when we think about discovered attacks, you should probably have noticed the rook lined up with the queen. And so you're probably thinking, okay, let's move the bishop somewhere, right? Because then we can create the discovered attack. However, in this position, we don't really have any good bishop moves. Like, yes, we can move it to any of these squares, but if we did that, white's queen could, if they wanted to, just take our rook or move the queen away or something, right? Like, it's not really that great. So this is an example of how we have to pair that information with something else that's going on in the position. And what is that? Well, we have our queen and we have white's king kind of exposed a little bit. So if we could maybe force the king to move somewhere that's even more exposed, maybe we could in the future use this idea, right? And so that's why the move for this puzzle is queen to d3 check. And the point is that white has no good way to get out of this check. You don't want to give up your bishop for free, we just take it. You can't move backwards because of our knight. And so you have to move either here or here. Now, this is the easy one. If they move here, what should we do? Well, you can probably figure it out. Now we can pair this information that we had before and we go check and we're taking the queen, right? Pretty straightforward. The tricky one is if they take our knight. Now we have to figure out what to do because, again, none of these bishop moves really make sense. So what should we play here? This is kind of a follow-up, but keep this idea in the back of your mind. What should we play? Well, if you said h5 check, you are correct. We're throwing in this little move to force the king to move on to one of these dark squares. And why do we care? Well, because it sets up our discovered attack on the queen, right? The queen is cutting off the escape this way. The king is defending here. The rook is defending here. So the king has to move on one of these dark squares. And as soon as they do that, we can go check and take the queen next move or almost next move. There's one more final little trick. White can block with check on our king, but we have a very simple solution. We just take it. It's still check. And then we do take the queen. So this is a much more advanced one. There was quite a few different pieces happening, but going back to the beginning, it all started with the idea of, can I force the king to go somewhere so that I could set up this discovered attack, right? And so you can see how this idea, you want to keep that in the back of your mind and look how you can make that work even in more complicated situations. Let's go to the next one. All right, here we go. It's white to play. What should you play here as white? And remember, keep that theme in the back of your mind. All right, if you had a chance to look at that. So this one, when you first look at the position, you're probably thinking there's no discovered attacks, right? And there's not. But what we can do is set up one. And so this is like sort of taking it to the next level. And what you want to be thinking about is, what moves might I want to play? And then would there be a discovered attack to follow that up? So in this position, there's a king over here. We have a queen and a rook. I'm probably going to start looking at some checks. So maybe I'm thinking about going check here, or check here, or check here, or check here, or check here. Which of those checks, based on what we've already learned in this video, which of those checks maybe jumps out at you the most? Well, if you said this one right here, you would be correct. And why does that one jump out at me? Not because I'm taking a pawn. The pawn, yes, we're taking a pawn, but that's not really the main issue. The reason this one jumps out at me is because of the diagonal here where my queen is now lined up with my opponent's queen. And this sets up a nice follow-up. So black's king, if we look at this, they don't want to go forward. If they go forward, this is just checkmate, right? And then same thing if they go here, checkmate. So they have to go backwards, but by going backwards, they've now stepped into a check with my rook, which, remember, is the only thing separating these queens. And so all I have to do is take that, and then I get the queen for free. Okay, so you can see how there wasn't a discovered attack immediately apparent, but we could create one essentially by going here as opposed to going here or going here, or, you know, like I could have played this move, but then the king's going to run, and now what am I going to do? Well, yes, I can take here, but that's just a trade. Probably going to lose that endgame because black has the extra pawn. Maybe I can get a draw, but not nearly as good, right, as setting up the discovered attack. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so here's the position. It's black to play. What move should you play here? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, remember, the theme is discovered attacks. What kind of discovered attacks do we have? Well, there's a queen lined up with a bishop. That's kind of a discovered attack. Now, you might be thinking, well, yeah, it's defended, and that's not really good for me. So how can we pair that knowledge? Well, we can trade first, and if white doesn't want to lose a piece, they're going to have to take us back. Now we've eliminated the defender, and now we can go back to, oh, okay, there's my discovered attack. Now what do I need to do with this pawn? Ah, take here with the attack on the queen. And here we go. After white saves the queen, we take the piece for free. And you can see how these discovered attacks come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's a rook, sometimes it's a bishop, sometimes it's a queen on a rank like this. I mean, all different ways, right? The last example, it was a queen on a diagonal, right? And so that's why they're so tricky. And that's why a lot of people miss them, because they come up in all these different ways. But if you start to train your brain, whenever you have a long range piece, just look and see, like, is there any opportunity for a discovered attack? Is there any opportunity for a discovered attack? Is there any opportunity for a discovered attack? Oh, yes, there is, right? That's how you want to train your brain to find these things. All right, let's keep going. Here we go. This one is another relatively difficult one, I would say, but it's white to play. What move should you play? All right, if you had a chance to look at that. So first of all, there's a lot happening in this position. Black has an attack on our rook. Our knight is being attacked. There's also, if you notice this, a battery here that we have to be careful about that could lead to checkmate if we just play a careless move like this, right? We're going to get checkmated. So there's a lot happening. However, we do have a very nice threat on Black's king if we play the move queen to g4. And this is a hard move to find. So if you didn't find this one, don't worry about it. I just want to really show you how this ties in with the discovered attack idea. Queen to g4 is a very nice move because we're pinning the pawn so that knight to f6 check is checkmate. It's also a fork, and it's very difficult for Black to stop that. One of the logical moves to stop this would be to take our knight. However, if they do that, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to, because we have the discovered attack, go there anyway. We don't care that Black's going to move away or whatever because we're going to take the queen. And if they take us, we have this over here. So there's a lot going on in this puzzle, but the takeaway that I wanted you to remember is that if we notice that, okay, if the queen takes here, I've got this check with a discovered attack, we can use that as like knowledge to say, okay, I don't need to worry about my knight and I can go on the offensive, right? That's kind of the takeaway. And so you use that discovered attack idea to then think of this move, and then after this you can hop in with the knight, and white is totally winning. So a little bit more advanced one there, but I wanted to show you that one. And now let's go to the final position, or the first position that I showed you in this video. So with the knowledge that we've learned already, what do you think the best move for white in this position is? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is knight to d6 check. And you know, when you look at this position, you probably think there's not really any discovered attacks. However, remember what I said about looking at the long range pieces. When I look at my rook, I see that there's a king back there. That should trigger something in my brain to say, you know what, there might be a tactic here. Now, it's a tricky one because there are two pawns in the way. And usually pawns can't move unless they capture diagonally, right? Which is like, how is this going to happen? But keep that in the back of your mind. And now we can see that after knight to d6 check, Black has a tough decision to make. You don't want to move your king because now you can't castle. You get forked. If you come up, that's also really, really bad. You're blocking your bishop. You're probably going to get into trouble that way. And so what Black would like to do is take, and then just take and everything be fine. However, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, you can't do this because c4 and your bishop is actually pinned. However, what Black could do is not take the pawn, just move the queen. And now they actually have a nice position. They have this battery lined up on us. This is very solid. We can't take this. It's defended. Everything is good for Black. Black's going to castle probably next move, and then the game goes on. However, after knight to d6 check, after bishop takes d6, instead of taking back, we have a really, really nice move. Queen takes d5. And the point is that if Black takes the queen, now they've opened up that rook, and we actually have this discovered. Actually, my terminology is wrong here. This is actually a discovered check. Technically, it's not a discovered attack. It's a discovered check because it is check. But the same idea applies, right? We're going to take there, create the check, and we're going to win our queen back. And at the end of the day, after the dust settles, we have an extra bishop. So we won a piece. Complicated way to win a piece, but we won a piece. And the other thing that's important about this is Black can't just ignore this and like try to save the bishop now because their rook is under attack as well. And if they try to save the rook, well, now we can take this with the queen or even with the pawn, and both of them are good moves. So the point and the takeaway here is even in positions where it doesn't look like you have a discovered attack or a discovered check available, a lot of times if you look a little deeper and you kind of pair that with some other moves and ideas, maybe you do, right? Like I said, these pawns had to capture for this to open up the file. That's exactly what we did. We brought the knight in. We were able to capture later, but first we threw in this, and if black captured it, it opened up the file. So a more complicated example, but hopefully you can see how these discovered attacks and discovered checks really show up all over the place in lots of different ways. And if you can learn this, it's going to be a game changer for you. Hey guys, as a reminder, this is one of the skills on my chess skills blueprint or chess skills tier list, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, it's this massive list of chess skills that you should learn, starting from you just learned how to play, you don't know anything, to you're trying to become a grandmaster. What are all the skills that you need to learn along the way? I've created this spreadsheet. You can see on here, right here, we have discovered attacks, which is the video that we just did. If you want to keep track of like what you're learning, I created this where there's this column. You can just, you know, like since we just did discovered attacks, you can come over here, change this to yes, I've learned that, and move on. Comes in dark theme, light theme. Links below if you want to check that out, but it's a great resource just to kind of keep track of what you're learning so you're not all over the place like, let me learn this and let me learn this. And anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. As always, stay sharp, play smart, take care.